So I have promised you guys a follow-up to Madeon's Isometric, and today I bring you track 2 from the adventure record. This is a track called You're On. The track offers many things for us to look at. I'm going to kind of focus on 3 main subjects, one of which is the use of dominant chords, when they belong, when they don't belong, and why they don't go where they're supposed to all the time. That's one thing we're going to look at. We're going to take a little bit of a detour into some inversion discussion and a little talk about 7th chords, not just the dominant 7th chords. But we're also going to take a brief look at key, because there are a couple of ways you can interpret this song. And really, it's the effect of melody on key. Because melody is a subject that I think a lot of people struggle with, and either they don't have the ear for the notes, or they're not a vocalist, or they don't have the language and know how to speak to a melodicist or a vocalist. But more importantly, melody doesn't have to have such a direct link into the key or from the key. Here I think it does, but it absolutely changes our potential interpretation of what the hell is going on in this song. This is a beautiful song, well sung, beautifully produced, excellent chord progression, but it's actually not that complicated until we look at the dominant 7th chord. And I think that's one of the secret sauces in this chord. Before I get into that, let me just tell you that if you're not familiar with the old classic from George Washington Jr.? That'd be funny. Grover Washington Jr. with guest singer Bill Withers, Just the Two of Us. That's a song to study before you even begin to get into this, because the move he does in here is very reminiscent of that song. So, just the two of us. You got to know that song in order to know this song. I'm Matt Donner, and this is Pyramind's The Breakdown. Okay, so what the hell's going on in here? One of the first things we have to figure out whenever, and people always ask me, like, Matt, how do you do these breakdowns? Well, it's tricky because I have to figure out the notes, the chords, the progression, and kind of take a guess as to what I think is going on, try some things and test them to see if they're working. And I think I've done a pretty good job here today. We'll let you guys tell me in the comments, as you always do. Thank you for those. Always fun reading. In this case, let's start the discussion with key, because there are actually 2 ways to interpret the 4 chords, or at least the 4 main chords in this song. So let's first of all just break down what those chords are. Okay, we're going to start here with C minor. And it's just a directly upward moving progression. So it goes from bass note C to bass note E flat to bass note G to bass note B flat. In and of itself, that is a C minor 7 chord. That provides the foundation of the bass motion. I think it provides the foundation of the chord motion. So we end up with C minor, E flat major, G minor, and then B flat major. Now, at first inspection, one might say, well, this is just a C minor progression. You have a C minor, you have an E flat major, that's the flat 3rd, you have a G minor, that's the 5 minor, and then you have a flat 7 in B flat. And I don't think that's wrong. I'm calling this song in G minor, and you might scratch your head and say, why? And the answer is the last thing we're going to talk about, which is the impact of melody on the interpretation of the song. Because one of the things that I really love about this song is that the chords just roll and roll and roll and roll and roll, and it's fully satisfying, but not satisfying at the same time, because there's no real resolution. And even when he throws in the dominant chord, which is supposed to provide tension, and then the chord after it provides resolution, he doesn't even give it to you then either, which is kind of a brilliant maneuver. So let's talk about this for a moment. In fact, I won't do it last. I'll just talk about melody right now. So the main chord progressions, you might say C minor, 1, 3, 5, and then 7. Okay. The reason why I'm calling it G minor is that if you take a look and really kind of break down the melody that's both in the vocal chops and in the sung vocal, it tends to hover around these notes. And there are 2 ways to look at that. One way is to say the whole thing's in B flat major, and you've heard me talk about the 1, 2, 3 over and over and over again. It would be 1, 2, 3. It's very sort of lullaby-like in that regard. But it's also the 3, 4, 5 of G minor. So if I played a G minor chord in the left hand, it also works. So to me, that kind of hammers it all home. While the melody is screaming B flat major, G minor, the chords are kind of hinting C minor, but also could be G minor. So if we take the same 4 chords and rethink them and just look at them from the perspective of G minor, we have the first chord is C minor, that's the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we have G minor, sorry, in the key of G minor, we have C minor, the 4, and then we have E flat major, the flat 6, to the 1, and to me that's where it all kind of lands, and then B flat major, the flat 3. If you call the song in C minor, you're not wrong. If you call the song in G minor, you're not wrong. Okay, it's just a matter of interpretation. Both sets of chords, or the one set of chords, belong in both keys. They just mean different things. Okay, they're serving different functions. The melody banging around B flat major and really banging around C minor, to me, kind of hammers it home. And so I'm calling it G minor. Madeon, if you think I'm wrong, let me know, because I would love to hear from you. Just saying, I'm always here. Now, we got the chords. We got the impact of melody on the chords, but these chords are not enough, okay? He's not just playing C minor. He's not just playing E flat major. He's not playing G minor, and he's not playing B flat major. He's doing these in sevenths, okay? So I'm going to go over to my friend Captain, who I know you guys know, and maybe sick of hearing me talk about, but Captain just so fast and so functional. And one of the reasons I'm coming to Captain is to just show you a couple of different versions of the progression real quick. Okay, so let me set up my cycle for just the first 8 bars here and walk you through what I'm doing. Because what I've done is in the verse, I've stepped them out in one way using just default triads. In the chorus, I've stepped them out as though we have 2 chords collected in voice leading, and then the next 2 chords in voice leading, and that's actually the same. So this is what it would sound like if I did 7th chords for this song in root inversion, which means 1, 3, 5, 7, and then 1, 3, 5, 7, and then 1, 3, 5, 7. What's nice about this is all of the notes kind of follow that same upward trajectory, so it's very easy to hear what's going on in the progression. In fact, let me move this out of the way so you can actually, hopefully we can see the piano kind of rocking along too. Let's see if this works. It does not, so it doesn't matter. We'll go back to this. So here we go. And it's that last chord, I think, as a major 7 that really feels like it's reaching. It's at the top of this ascending run, and at the top is that major 7, which has that just sort of like, I'm almost there, and then, no, right back to the beginning. Again, satisfying, but not satisfying. And it's interesting that the first chord, in my interpretation at least, the first chord is not the root. If you consider this in the key of C minor, then it would be in the root, but then you'd say, okay, well you could do that, and then the melody would be in a relative key, like you'd be doing a melody in the relative Dorian to the C minor Aeolian. No wrong answer here, I'm just calling it G minor. Okay, so this is what it sounds like in root inversion. But then if I come over to the pre-chorus, where I'm taking the exact same chords and simply respelling them, you can see something very interesting. The thing that I find most interesting with this inversion is you get these 2 notes here that kind of cluster, and then these 2 notes up top here that cluster. And 2 notes that are played next to each other provide a lot of tension. So again, throughout this progression in this voice leading, there's a lot of tension. So this is what it sounds like inverted as 7th chords. Kind of get these 2 are lower, not moving as much, and then big leap. There is a third way if you find chords like this and you say, wow, those are great chords, I'm going to steal the song, Madeon, sorry. I want to do those chords, but I want to do them a little bit differently. I'm going to pull them over to the piano just for a moment, because I want to show you yet a third way to think about chords and spelling them. Okay, so we start in C minor, but as C minor 7. So for now, I'm just going to do them in triads to show you what happens. Okay, you have this C minor, and if I were to do root inversion, actually, let me do it this way. C minor, and I only ever have to move one finger at a time. So right now I'm staying in triads. I know he's playing sevenths, but I'm just showing you the voice leading in triads for simplicity. C, E flat, G becomes B flat, E flat, G, which is a B flat major. Excuse me, it is a E flat major triad, inverted. So all I have to do is move the thumb down to the next chord, and now all I have to do is move the middle finger to this chord, and I all of a sudden have G minor, G, B flat, D. And then I move the pinky down a whole step to the B flat major. So it's very simple. Move the thumb, move the middle finger, move the pinky. It's a very nice, fluid way to keep your voicings tight and to just make it easy on your fingers, okay? I'm not doing that, but I just wanted to show you that because I think it's really interesting. So, what key is it? I don't know. Maybe it's C minor, maybe it's G minor. I'm calling it G minor because of the melody impact. What's happening with the chords? They're seventh chords. Minor 7, major 7, minor 7, major 7. Okay? Upward motion, maybe voice led, maybe not, up to you. I think I'm going to go over to Captain, and I'm just going to go back to the default triad inversion, where the notes keep their form and simply move up the pitch. I think that might be easiest on our ears. So, with that said, let's take a hot listen to the song as I have it, and Corrice will put on those fancy visuals for you so you can all trip out to the pretty colors, because that's always fun. And let's just listen a little bit. Let's see how my rendition does. And then I want to show you where he completely screws us up and where I had to make some changes in order to follow along. And that's the dominant stuff. And we'll talk about that in just a moment, because that's where we get back to Grover Washington Jr., not George Washington Jr. It'd be nice if I knew my artists. So let's take a listen to the track and have fun with the colors. You get the idea. What I really want to focus in on is what's happening in the verse. And before we actually get to the verse, let's just talk about arrangement for a moment. Because this is actually a very simply arranged song, and it's not very standard. Let's zoom out all the way. Okay, this is a song called You're On. I'm looking at one track. Madeon's looking at the whole album. We just came out of 4 minutes in the album, 3 or 4 minutes of isometric, which is that very deep and intricate chord progression with the never-ending tempo increase, just a massive amounts of drama, building tension, building tension, building tension, and then, ooh, we come down, and then boom, we start this song. But there's a song right after this as well. He doesn't have to give you a full-blown version of the song, because it's sandwiched in between 2 other giant songs. Like, why do I have to give the audience such a monstrous piece of music when I'm giving them a monstrous piece of music in front of it and then another monstrous piece of music at the end of it? I mean, the first 3 songs is a fluid experience. It's almost like 15 plus minutes or so. I didn't do the count. I don't know how long it is, maybe 10, maybe 12. But it's fairly long for pop-ish music. So I think he doesn't really have to give you a ton. So if we look at just the arrangement, he's got basically 8 bars of this intro. Well, there's vocal chops in front of it. So there's 8 bars of vocal chops, and then 8 bars of main groove. And then there's 8 bars of the verse. And then there's 8 bars of the vocal chop, like pre-chorus again. It's really the pre-chorus. And we get the vocal So between the intro, the verse, the pre-chorus, well, we've got the intro, the pre-chorus, the verse, the pre-chorus again, and then the chorus, we're only at measure 33. That's only 32 bars of song. And then he gives 16 bars of breakdown, goes right back to the chorus, and then he's out. No second verse. That's it. That's it. We're done. He's like, look, man, I got so much music in front of this, and I got so much music coming after this, and the rest of the record. I don't really need to do the whole arrangement. It's really, really smart, because this is the kind of thinking that bands and artists used to do when we were, they were putting out albums. And this is really an album. It's not just like a bunch of tracks. So he's not thinking about the arrangement of the song as much as he's thinking about the arrangement of the song in the context of everything else. It's a very important point. With that said, let's dig into dominance and figure out what the fuck is he doing in here. Because this shouldn't make sense, but it does. All right, I think I'm going to come here to this measure, and I'll point it out when you hear the chord that like doesn't belong. That's our guy. The question is, what is it and why does it sound so strange or different from the rest? Because remember, we've had C minor 7. I should probably have a sound when I play the piano. So I'm just like, so C minor 7, E flat minor, major 7, let's do it this way, G minor 7, and then normally we have B flat, perhaps major 7, definitely major 7, but now we have, that note doesn't really belong. So what the hell is it doing there? And what is this chord in the first place? This is a B flat dominant. It's a very specific type of 7th chord. It's used, its history goes all the way back to Bach and classical music in the 1600s and probably even before that. It is a major triad, not a major 7, with a flat 7 on top, and it creates tension. Now the thing about dominant chords is that they're usually functioning in the 5th position. So you got the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3 chord, the 4 chord, and then the dominant chord. But the dominant chord doesn't have to live in the 5 all the time. And the other thing about dominance is that the 5 chord normally wants to fall to the 1 chord, but it doesn't have to do that either. And in this case, it doesn't. Later it does, but now it doesn't. So if I'm in the key of G minor, even if I'm in the key of C minor, the B flat has no business being dominant. It's not the 5 chord in either of them. But he's like, that's what I'm going to do, right there. So it creates tension, and instead of going from B flat dominant, which would normally want to go to E flat major, so again, dominant to major, he doesn't go there. He lands it right back at the beginning of the progression. Why? Because he can. He's conditioned you to hear C, then E flat, then G, then B flat, then C again. So in this case, it's just C minor 7, E flat major 7, G minor 7. Instead of B flat major 7, now it's just B flat dominant. Where am I going to go after that? Right back to C. So it's an interesting use of dominance. First of all, it doesn't belong. Second of all, it doesn't belong where it belongs. And third of all, it doesn't go where it's supposed to go. But it works. And it's a beautiful setup for later. This is the kind of technique that Grover, and actually a little bit later, it's even more closely related to just the two of us. So let's listen one more time, and I'll point it out one more time so you can hear it. And then we'll talk about what he does with dominance later, because he does dominance a totally different way later. Sorry, that's the 4, then the 7, this is the 1. And it works super well at the end of the progression. It works even better because the melody is now adjusted from, and now we come up to, And that change really hammers home the diminished, or the dominant chord being different. Let's fast forward to the break. Because in the break, something else happens. Here's the first 8 bars of the break. That's the, quote, regular old 4-chord progression. And now here in this second 4-chord progression, he changes it up. That one. And then this one. Well, I gave you a dominant chord earlier. I think I'll give you 2. Why? Because I'm Madeon. I can. Let's take a deep look at what's actually going on here, okay? So, we have back to C minor. Earlier, we expected the dominant over here in the B flat. And we'll get there in a second. But before that, he goes to D dominant. If I could play today. This is D dominant. How does this work? Well, if I'm in the key of C minor, he's doing a 2 dominant, which is, there's plenty of precedent for that, including Danny Elfman's Batman theme. Danny did that too, so it's plenty of precedent for that. But what's really happening here, and to me, this is why the song is in the key of G minor, because this D dominant is actually acting like a real 5 chord. It's an actual dominant that's actually in the 5th position, and where does it go afterwards? Right to G, right where it's supposed to. D down a 5th to G. So, C minor, D dominant, G minor. B flat dominant. Right back to the progression. So he's got that same dominant coming up again in B flat, but before he gets there, he's like, you know what, I'm going to throw some more in there. It's a breakdown. Let's do something interesting. Well, I'm in the key of G minor, I think. Let's throw in a D dom. Why not? It's right next to C. Just some brilliant, brilliant use of dominant chords. And these are things that you can use at any point and any time in your progression, but when you do, make sure of a couple of things. Number one, make sure you're building the chord right. It should be a major triad with a flat 7. Make sure you're building it right. Second of all, know where it lives in the progression. You might want to think about what's a 5th below it, because that's where you're supposed to go, but you don't have to. You could go anywhere, as he does with the B flat dominant throughout the progression. But in this case here in the breakdown, by hitting that D, he's really letting us know, well, you might have thought this was in C minor, but really I think it's not, because we have a proper 5 dominant in D dominant going to a proper 1 chord in G minor. And since the interpretation of C minor and G minor is really equidistant from each other, either is, quote, correct. My opinion, G makes more sense because of the melody, because of the D dom 7 chord. And so, if you're thinking about using dominance, this is one way to do it. Remember, arrangements are not just for songs within the song, they're for songs within the scope of a larger context. Remember that key is a relative and interpretive thing. It's not necessarily what you think it is. Just because the first chord is C minor doesn't necessarily mean it's in C minor. You might be right, you might not. It's subjective and it's interpretive. Interpretive, is that the right? I think I'm interpretive. I'm going to run with that. I'm not sure if that's the right. Is that the right pronunciation? It is. Okay, thank you. Glossary. And the melody is kind of banging around and hammering G minor. So between the G minor working on its own, the G minor from the melody, and the G minor implication for the D dominant in the middle, I'm calling it G minor. Argue with me all you want on comments, by all means. Those are always fun. And as you know, I like to respond to comments. So if you're interested in more theory or trying to figure out what this is really all about and why do I care and how do I use this in my music, please come check us out. By all means, book some mentorship sessions with either myself or Ryan or any of the 50 mentors we have in the network who are all theory monsters. By all means, enroll in one of our classes. We have the EMP Online, which has within it the music theory course, which is fantastic. Otherwise, I look forward to reading your comments on YouTube, because they're always fun and entertaining. I'm Matt Donner. This is The Breakdown, and this has been Madeon's You're On from the Adventure record. I will be back with more breakdowns, and probably some from Madeon, because he's got a ton to teach us in this record. Here you go. You're On.
If you're an aspiring music producer and ready to evolve your sound, find out more about our San Francisco ground campus, online classes, and one-on-one mentorships at Pyramind.com.